Real ID passed in 2005, and sets minimum identity authentication standards for state IDs to be used for federal purposes, namely boarding an aircraft, entering a military base, or entering a secure federal facility. Following the passage of the law, several states initially enacted legislation expressing opposition or barring implementation of federal mandates. Minnesota was one such state. The 2009 legislature enacted a Real ID prohibition for both state planning and implementation. Over time, state responses have changed, and now only 5 states are not either compliant or in the process of complying with Real ID. Minnesota last year repealed the prohibition on planning, but left in place the prohibition for implementation of Real ID. And members, that's what we're here to do today. The timeline has been a bit sketchy on this and changed over time. But as of last fall, Minnesota IDs are no longer being accepted for entry into military bases and some federal buildings. And starting January 22nd, they'll no longer be accepted for boarding an aircraft for a domestic flight. Members, I'm not going to cover every section because it's a lengthy and technical bill, but I'll cover just a few of those that I think are relevant. Section 1 simply defines a non-compliant ID as not meeting those rules as Real ID compliant. Section 2 and 3 define the Real ID Act and temporary lawful status by referencing federal law. Section 4 directs the department to perform criminal background checks on all agents, current and prospective employees at both the department and at our local registrars. Section 5 is really where we start to get into the heart of this thing. And that provides for the implementation of the federal requirements. It directs the Department of Public Safety to issue Real ID driver's licenses and identification cards, to continue issuing our current driver's license. It locks in compliance to the date of enactment. So members, if the federal government changes any of the privacy provisions around the Real ID, our state law will have locked in place that it has to come to the legislature before we can make those changes. And that the commissioner is prohibited from implementing any changes and must notify the legislature before doing so. Section 8 establishes the cost of the Real ID must be the same as a non-compliant ID. Section 10 defines the information that must be made available to applicants. So, when you go in to apply for your identification card, it will describe the type of each license and ID card, an overview of the data that is shared outside of the state, a statement that a Real ID is not mandatory. We are providing our residents a choice. A website where more information can be found, to send out renewal cards where that must list that website, and applicants for the non-compliant license must acknowledge they understand the limitations of the ID card that they're getting. Section 11 establishes the documents that will be required to meet the federal Real ID standards. Sections 12 and 13 state Real IDs must contain a distinguishing mark that shows compliance, and that the non-compliant license must state not for federal purposes, or not for federal identification. Section 18 establishes requirements for the use of and access of MNLARs and mandates a biennial audit of the system. Section 20 prohibits the department from sharing any data on non-compliant driver's licenses and IDs outside of the state if they're not being shared at the time of enactment. Section 21 prevents the sharing of any firearm data maintained by the department. Section 24 limits rulemaking to only the changes necessary to implement the Real ID and only those technical aspects. Section 25 is an appropriation section, and then Section 27 and 28 repeals the prohibition on implementing Real ID and defines the effective date as the date following enactment. Members, on your desk, you will find a letter from the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce with my name on it in support of the Real ID, and you'll also find an updated fiscal note. As we've looked at the implementation of the Real ID, the proposal is that if someone's identification, well, let me take a step back, members. If we pass this today, we expect to be able to get an extension from the federal government and allow our current identification cards to be accepted through October of 2020. The department will start issuing Real IDs in October of 2018, and there will be a few Minnesotans whose IDs will expire after October of 2020. Those folks will be able to come in, upgrade their license early, pay their $25 fee, and get a new 4-year extension on the expiration of their driver's licenses. This has the support of the deputy registrars who originally opposed this bill because it was unclear how their small businesses were going to get paid. Members, many Minnesotans expect us to pass Real ID so that they can continue to use their state identification cards for federal purposes. Our business community and their employees want to travel without having to carry any additional credentials. In some cases, our constituents need access to federal facilities. But we also have residents that don't want to carry an ID that meet the minimum federal standards and will carry an extra credential whenever they need to. And members, we're giving those folks a choice. I believe this bill, which is very similar to the bill that we passed off this floor last year, should be passed, and our constituents expect us to pass it today.
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, we've debated this issue for quite some time, a couple years now. Matter of fact, for many of you, you were not here in 2009 when every one of the members of the legislature, with the exception of one, were voting in a united way to prohibit Minnesota from becoming a Real ID state. At that time, we joined 32 other states to say no to the intrusive nature of this policy. And it was a universal message to the federal government that said we would prefer not to comply. And what has happened since? It's kind of a mystery because, quite honestly, it hasn't been the vast declaration by the federal government. They changed their tact. They changed their tact over 2 different administrations, the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and now landing in the Trump administration. The first 2 continued to push off the enactment date further and further down the road, and we really haven't heard a clear message from the existing presidential administration of whether or not they'll do that or not. But the fact remains that since the time of 2009, those 32 states have quietly been assaulted by the federal government. And the approach that the federal government has used is rather, instead of a carrot to encourage states to comply, they basically have used a club. They have used a club to make states submit. And the most common club that they have used is the threat of taking airline travel privileges away from citizens whose states do not comply. It's really quite remarkable that we live in a country that style of submission is even in existence, one that I honestly deplore. And I think everyone should deplore that type of action. You know, it used to be that highways, if you didn't comply with certain transportation issues, the federal government would simply withhold your money, the federal money that would be used to build a road. But now the federal government has taken it upon himself to do something just a little bit more. And the little bit more is that they're going to now target our citizens and deny them the right to travel on an airline. It's kind of interesting how all the states have quietly been divided and conquered since 2009. Most states, let's say, have complied. They've been subdued. Their opportunity to exercise the federal form of government has been squeezed out of them. And now it's Minnesota's turn. We've talked about it for a number of years. We've talked about, and in a way I have to thank the leadership and your participation, all of us. We've actually had some very good hearings this session. And quite a few of amendments, have been considered. We've engaged in this discussion. We've had a number of committees try and understand this bill. Something quite more than what the federal government offered the American citizens when they passed this in the dead of night, 2:30 in the morning, in an amendment that was not roll called. That's what brought us the Real ID bill. Another deplorable action from the hand of the federal government. Well, we're now here. I haven't heard too much about the benefits of Real ID. I haven't heard it during our committee hearings. I haven't heard it today. The only real message that we are talking about is well, we don't want to be Club 2. We want to avoid that airline prohibition. And if we don't pass it, we will be responsible for doing that to our people. Well, I have to disagree with that line of logic. Quite honestly, the federal government is imposing that threat. And what will we really be giving up? Well, we do have the opportunity to get involved in this bill. I suppose we'll make that decision today, at least our Senate portion of it. We haven't talked too much about the increases in hacking of our citizens' privacy if we vote yes today. We haven't talked about the data sharing from state to state. And, thanks to us, and for the last, 30, 40 years, our legislative bodies have taken it upon ourselves to take that extra step beyond what the federal government requires on all sorts of data sharing. We have made Minnesota a stronger data privacy state. It is well known, and it does create a few obstacles in certain trades, but nevertheless, our citizens are more protected than almost any other state in the country. But we're going to be creaking the door open a little bit. All of our data that we will hold on citizens based on the collection required by Real ID will be held, but we can share it. The Real ID Act demands that we share our citizens' data with other government bureaucracies in 49 other states. Question remains is if we have a very strong data privacy law in Minnesota and someone, let's say from South Dakota, a bureaucrat there wants to tap into our system and in some way abuses that information, we should all know that we cannot enforce our laws to protect our citizens once that data goes beyond our borders. That's a very serious encroachment in our pledge to protect our citizens' privacy. We've We certainly have started to talk about the loss of control. Once we say yes to this policy, we are saying yes that the Homeland Security Director, a political appointee of the White House, can expand the purpose and function of the Real ID card whenever that individual chooses to in the future. That means they bypass Congress. Our vote that's in the hands of the representative branch, our congressmen and congresswomen, can't get involved in what the Department of Homeland Security does with our information or with this policy. I think that's a poor direction to go in. By doing so, it triggers a 10th Amendment. Well, the whole bill triggers a 10th Amendment question of whether or not this is the role of the federal government. They use the connection of airline travel because that's a federally governed institution recognized by the federal government, but nevertheless, it does dictate questions of the 10th Amendment. It raises questions about the restriction on travel mentioned elsewhere in our Constitution. It raises a number of questions throughout, and I think quite honestly, we're allowing ourselves to govern ourselves on this issue from a spirit of fear. Fear that something's going to happen, the federal government's come and club us. Wouldn't you like to just bring this to a court? Wouldn't you like to raise these questions in the court and ask the court, is the federal government taking a step too far? Is the federal government going a step too far by clubbing all of the states into submission? Wouldn't it be nice to ask the federal courts on all of these other constitutional issues? We've talked about it in some of our committees, but quite honestly, this is an issue for a national discussion. Because I believe that once we say yes to the Real ID law, we lose control. You are giving up your authority to govern this area of law to the federal government. Not only the federal government, a single political appointee. Now, some of you might have suspicions about the Trump administration, and quite honestly, some of us had suspicions about the previous one. And the question is do we trust whoever is in the White House to have a person that is so pure in logic, so devoid of any political ambition or cause that they're going to do this right? Quite honestly, I think there's only been one person on the face of the earth that could satisfy that requirement. We really are not given a spirit of fear. We're called biblically to have a spirit of power and a clear mind. And I think we should resist that spirit of fear and simply say no to the federal government. I think this is the wrong direction. I think we're going to rue the day that when we get to the point of a few years when the magnetic strip on the card will change to an RFID chip. It could happen, and we can't say anything about it. The collection of information can be expanded just due to the whim of a political bureaucrat in Washington, D.C., and we can't do anything about it. Maybe the individual person is virtuous now, but what's going to happen in the future when someone else is doing it? I think this is giving way too much power to the federal government, and I would suggest that we hold on to the power that we have as delegated under our national constitution, that the federal government really doesn't have that responsibility to tell states what to do in this far-reaching, intricate, over-the-top manner. I've made comments on this for a number of years. I have read the Real ID bill over and over and over. I was looking for any little angle I could that would give me an impression to say yes to this. And quite honestly, it still isn't there. It's still not ready. And quite honestly, I think the federal government has gone way above the top. They started out saying that the Real ID card was going to fight terrorism. We're all going to be safe if we carry that little magnetic strip on a little 2-by-3-inch plastic card. We'll all be safe. Well, I doubt that. I think trying to stop an international terrorist effort is going to take a lot more effort than just punching out a plastic card and so everyone can have it. But what it does do, it gives the federal government an opportunity to create a driver license that creates a chilling combination of personal data access and endless surveillance opportunities. The choice is now yours.
Senator Franzen.
There we go. Thank you, Madam President. I rise in front of this body to unfortunately oppose this bill. I've been on the Transportation Public Safety Committee for 4 years now in the Senate. I've heard this bill more than a few times in committee. It did get better until it came to the floor today, and unfortunately I cannot support it, and I know a lot of the constituents that I represent and a lot of Minnesotans that we all represent want us to pass this compliance for the most part, fearing that they will not be able to board a plane, go on their commerce and their jobs and do everything with ease. But members, let's be real. We know what the controversial language is here, and we haven't really talked about it in great detail. And I can't sit here and vote no without bringing that to members' attention and really having a frank discussion about what this bill does and what it doesn't. This bill was supposed to be about compliance. It became a bill about restricting individuals in our state. And I cannot just vote or not vote for a bill in this case that will put additional restrictions that are frankly not needed or unnecessary and further divide us as a state. We hear the federal rhetoric about our borders, about our safety. And members, we need to stop that here in Minnesota. We can't keep feeding into that. And I'm really disappointed that this bill is on this floor. With all due respect, Senator Pratt, I respect your work. We work on many things together, but I just cannot support this as written. And we had a chance here today to actually fix the bill, to take this language off. It's not needed, it's counterproductive, it's restrictive, and frankly, it's borderline offensive. That here in Minnesota, we are talking about restricting our Minnesotans and the people who are in this state further than what the federal government needs us to do. Why would we go in that direction? Enough's enough. We don't need more people to be afraid of other people in our state. We need to be as inclusive as possible, and this language, members, does nothing for us. I would really hope that we would be able to take this language off, and it was just simple language striking on the 24 section rulemaking, and unfortunately it was not. But unfortunately I cannot stand here today to support this bill as much as many of my constituents want me to, but frankly the majority has told me not to. So please find it in your hearts, in your brain, in your welcoming spirit of Minnesotans as we are, that Minnesota is not going to follow this federal rhetoric of being an inclusive state. Let's take a stance. This is not about traveling from state to state with a passport or an ID. This is going above and beyond, and we need a clean bill. I would vote for it in a heartbeat, but this is not a clean bill, and unfortunately I cannot support that, and I hope that you join me in voting against it. Thank you.
Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real ID, as I was reading in an article just on February 2nd, the Real ID is a response to the 9/11 terror attacks nearly 16 years ago. And the question asked here is, will Real ID actually protect us from such a tax? I think not, as evidenced by the Boston bombing, the mass shootings in Miami, San Bernardino, Virginia Tech, Fort Hood, etc. Real ID will not make us any safer, but will give the federal government more control and result in less liberty for the people. And the gentleman who writes this quotes William Pitt when he says, "Necessity is the plea for every infringement of freedom. It is the argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves." And then he asks the question, are you ready? Are you really ready to trade your liberty for maybe a little convenience? And the question then comes back, what will you tell your children when they ask, where were you when the government was stealing our liberty? And so I see Real ID as something that has been foisted upon each state. Here in the state of Minnesota, we've been trying to fight this. In fact, in 2009, there was a bill that was put in, and the Governor Plenty, signed a bill saying that we would not continue on dealing with Real ID or the tentacles that encompass that issue. And yet in committee, in the Judiciary Committee, in talking with the Department of Public Safety and finding out about different things that were passed in the bureaucracy, not given any privilege by the legislature, whether it was the Senate or the House, there were requests for money to this national government for transportation purposes. And when it was asked, how did this money come to us? Because clearly, in statute, signed by the governor of the state of Minnesota, this was prohibited. Well, it's the old bait and switch where you can put a different name or a different title on top of the piece of bureaucratic red tape coming from Washington to say, well, this was used for this purpose, or this was used for that purpose. And we find out that our bureaucracy here in the state of Minnesota is become insatiable for more money. And any way that they can get it to further enhance something that has been prohibited, they'll do it under the guise, or as this bill was passed from Washington, D.C., in the dark of night. So I see this bill, this Real ID, as something that's very wrong, and yet people within our bureaucratic control that we supposedly have wherewithal and the say-so about how our bureaucrats are supposed to run the Department of Education, Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Transportation, DPS, are willing to forego what has been put in statute, forego what we have said here on a Senate floor or on a House floor, wherever and get the governor to sign it. We're willing to forego those things in order to get the insatiable appetite. I see this as something that I hate to bring up, but we have been brought to the point of being part of the oldest job industry in the whole world. The #1 job industry in this whole world. Anybody know what that is? You women probably have heard about it. But that's what the states have come to. We've come to the fact that we love money from the federal government more than we want to keep our rights, more than what we want to say for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and those in perpetuity. So I think that what has happened here is the states, 50 states, are being subjected to the pimping of the federal government to become part of their solution, which, according to guidelines, according to what I've heard, was not even passed by the federal government, by the Congress, by the U.S. senators. It was passed as an amendment that didn't even get to see the light of day. Real ID is basically a situation where states of Pennsylvania, Missouri, Maine, and 25 other states have said no, and they've been told that they're not going to continue on with this. I think this is a situation where we need to take a long, hard look at what we're doing and make sure that we don't foist this on our future I think that it's already been stated in several pieces of literature that came through different committees, the Transportation Committee this year, the Judiciary Committee, where there's information that shows that you can still get on a plane. You might have to have a little inconvenience as far as getting on that plane or get an enhanced driver's license. I've got a passport that I've had since I was in the military, and I continue to renew it. That might be a little inconvenience, but to me, it's a small inconvenience when it compares to the federal government having the final say in what's going to happen to our rights as far as the information that they're asking on these licenses. I was just told in the last week that 12 senators from Missouri have signed a letter to the federal government saying, how come you can tell us what to do with what we put on our driver's license? Well, you gave them the right to do it. Sorry, we've lost control. It's now in the hands of the federal government. So, gentlemen, ladies, I appreciate your no vote on this House File 3. Thank you.
Senator Pratt?
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the discussion we've had here on the floor today. Again, I would say that many of our constituents are looking for us to do the right thing. They're looking for us to work together and get something done and to quit the partisan bickering. Now, Senator Limmer is right. We did join 32 other states in opposing the Real ID. And the law looked a lot different back then. There was talk of a national database. There was talk about chips being embedded in the card. None of those are happening today. And with the Westrom Amendment now, we've stated if the Department of Homeland Security Director makes a change, it's got to come back through this legislature or it expires. The federal government has jurisdictions over certain parts of our life. They can decide who enters federal buildings. They decide who can enter military facilities. And yes, they have jurisdiction over our domestic airspace. And they can decide whether or not they're willing to accept a credential or not. Just like they can accept whether or not you take out your little bag of gel and put it on the conveyor belt. It's annoying. And yet, the federal government has not come to me and said, you must implement this. There is no 10th Amendment sovereignty issue here. The federal government said, states, if you want us to accept your identification card, you must comply with these minimum standards. And I am simply saying, members, we should be complying with those minimum standards. We have a choice as a body. Now, beyond that, like 16 of the 24 states that have already implemented Real ID, we are also offering our citizens a choice. If you don't want to get a Real ID, if you don't want your information being pinged up against someone else's database to see if you have another ID, then you can opt out for the current one. And we won't be doing anything different tomorrow than we are today. Senator Limmer stated that we haven't had a discussion on privacy and data security. I would respectfully disagree because I talked about both issues. This simply makes it easier for our residents to access those three purposes. But also, it makes it easier for us to expand the current enhanced ID that we already have. Right now, only 13 facilities in the state can issue an enhanced ID. This would make it so that every license bureau would have the capability to do that. And now we would have our entire suite of identification cards available across the state, especially in greater Minnesota where most of our license bureaus are privately owned and not not under state control, but they meet the strict state data privacy standards. Senator Franzen and Senator Dibble. Senator Franzen, to quote, said this bill is offensive. This bill is offensive. Members, last year on May 12th, we passed a Real ID bill. In lines 1431 through 1433, and I quote, "The Commissioner of Public Safety shall adopt rules and amend existing Minnesota rules only to the extent necessary to implement a two-tier license program under the Real ID Act." Members, if that language was clean last year, why isn't it clean now? Why is it offensive now? I'll tell you why. Because Governor Dayton, as reported in the Pioneer Press, believes that we should be creating loopholes and politicizing this issue. I disagree. I have dozens of emails from Minnesotans, not just from my district, but from across the state, saying, please just pass a Real ID bill and deal with the other issues later. So, members, I respectfully ask for your green vote on this. This is not an offensive bill. This is a bill that gets the job done. And we owe it to Minnesotans to get the job done. Thank you.
Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, I'm hoping today that we pass this bill, but it was never a bill that would be passed with just Republicans. I went back to last year's bill, the bill that Senator Pratt talked about, the language that's almost exactly the same as the language we have here today in that regards. 36 Democrats voted yes, 12 Republicans voted yes. 16 Republicans voted no. I was one of those Republicans that voted no. I don't want the federal government telling us what to do. My hope was that with the new Trump administration and Republicans in control of the House and Senate, that they would get rid of this. But we did inquiries, and that is not the course they are on. So here we are. January looming, signs up at the airport saying if you don't have a Real ID or passport, you're not flying. You know, and that's easy for me to say, well, I don't think they should do it, and I've got a passport, and everybody should get a passport. But I don't think that's reality. I don't think that's doing the right service to our constituents. I don't think it's meant to make them go through an extra loop or two just so that we have our way and say we're not going to buck to the federal government. I am frustrated with the federal government, but here we are. So as we move through this process this year, I decided if I'm going to ask you to vote for it, I'm going to vote yes. Even though I don't want the federal government meddling, I'm going to vote yes. If I'm asking other people to pass it, I'm going to vote yes. And I had senators from the other side of the aisle come to me and telling me, please don't do what the House is doing. Please don't have the language that specifically makes it more difficult for those who are here illegally to get a driver's license. And through conversations with a number of people and talking to Senator Pratt, we decided let's have a clean, neutral bill. This is a clean bill. It doesn't further undocumented or illegal immigrants getting driver's license or not getting it like the House. It doesn't expand it like the governor wants. It's just dealing with Real ID. It isn't dealing with the other issue. And I went down that route because I said for this to pass, it's going to have Republicans and Democrats. I appreciate and respect Senator Anderson, Senator Limmer, and a few others that are defending our rights and are frustrated with the federal government to such a degree that they cannot vote for this. I respect them. But there's a whole bunch of us that should be voting for this today. certainly that 36 Democrats, or at least those that are still here from last year, you should be voting yes for this bill. And there will be a lot of Republicans that are voting for this bill because it's just dealing with real ID. But if we do not have Democratic votes on this, it can only be because of the meeting that you had with the governor last week about not passing this bill unless we add another issue into this bill. I hope that's not the case. Members, I'm asking for a green vote. This is a clean bill. It only deals with real ID. Let's get this done.
Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll on House File 3.
Came through. God bless you, David.
Secretary will close the roll. There being 29 ayes and 38 nays, the bill is not adopted.